A warning on radicalisation from the Prince of Wales. Delivering sympathy to the King of Jordan, he aims his anger at extremists who target Britain's young and vulnerable.
The frightening part is that people can be so radicalised either through contact with somebody else or through the internet.
Also tonight, Putin puts pressure on Ukrainian peace talks. He set a deadline of 72 hours. Uncovering the cover-ups, the government moves to stop another NHS scandal. And the stars arrive at the BAFTAs with several Brits up for top honours.
This is ITV News with James Mates.
Good evening. The Prince of Wales took aim at the barbarity of religious extremists today as he travelled to meet the King of Jordan. His message was delivered to a country still mourning the loss of a pilot burnt to death by the so-called Islamic State. Prince Charles also issued a warning to Britain over the way young people are being radicalised by religious extremists. From Jordan, here's our Middle East correspondent, Geraint Vincent.
The alliance between the UK and Jordan is one of the oldest in the Middle East, and the long friendship Prince Charles has had with the royal family here is a key part of it. King Abdullah rules a country which has been in trauma this week after one of its fighter pilots was murdered by the extremists of the so-called Islamic State. And at a meeting of religious leaders of all faiths at the King's Palace, the Prince's first message was one of sympathy.
All those who have any feeling of watching agony as people of all faiths have been persecuted and driven from their homes, tortured and killed in the most barbaric way imaginable.
Before he began this tour, the Prince spoke of the great worries he has about young people being radicalised in Britain.
The values we hold dear, you would think that people who've come here and born here, go to school here, would imbibe the sort of those values and outlooks. But the frightening part is that people can be so radicalised either through contact with somebody else or through the internet.
The ideologies that the Prince of Wales is so concerned about are finding their most horrific expression in these lands. So there is a real political priority for this tour, and it is to express solidarity with those Arab governments who are part of the military attempt to defeat the extremists. Since the murder of its pilot, Jordan has put itself at the front of that effort. In 3 days, it says it's carried out 56 airstrikes on IS targets in Syria. As Jordan's jets were flying home from their missions, the Prince of Wales was visiting a camp for refugees from the Syrian war, where the British government has paid for classrooms and a football pitch, projects to make blighted lives a bit more bearable.
Well, Geraint, this is day one in a 6-day tour of the Middle East for Prince Charles. How significant is what he's doing?
Well, one diplomat here in Jordan has told me that this tour could not be taking place at a more opportune moment. The Prince is in Jordan right now. He moves on to Saudi Arabia and then the Emirates, all of them key members of the anti-IS coalition. And all of them have some concerns that the Western powers aren't being aggressive enough in the fight against IS and that they're focused too much on containing the IS problem rather than destroying it completely. So the Prince is very friendly with all of the ruling families here, and the UK government will be very keen to reassure these governments, these key Arab allies, that they are serious about dealing with the problem. So this tour is not just about photo calls, there's a serious diplomatic mission to be accomplished here too.
Geraint, thanks very much indeed. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has called for countries involved in the Ukrainian peace talks to agree their positions by Wednesday. Talks aimed at a truce, led by Germany and France, continued by phone today. And as Duncan Golostani reports, the next 72 hours could be decisive.
The fighting in eastern Ukraine remains intense, even as peace talks continue. After weeks of escalating violence, there are hopes a deal could soon be brokered. This morning, the Russian president spoke by phone with the leaders of France, Germany and Ukraine. He said they had agreed to meet on Wednesday in Belarus if they have managed to agree the positions they have been discussing in recent days. Those discussions follow the failure of a peace plan last year. This time there is an added complication: disagreement between European leaders and the United States on how best to help the Ukrainians. A difference of opinion the US Secretary of State has tried to downplay.
There is no division, there is no split. I keep hearing people trying to create one. We are united, we are working closely together. We all agree that this challenge will not end through military force. We are united in our diplomacy.
So far, diplomacy has done little for the nearly 1 million people displaced during the year-long war. Today, humanitarian aid was coming by the lorry load, but the people here are hoping the coming week brings a longer-term solution. Duncan Golestani, ITV News.
A 16-year-old has been charged with rape after a woman was attacked in Rochdale. It happened after the 46-year-old was approached in the street in the early hours of Wednesday. The teenager will appear at Bury and Rochdale Magistrates Court tomorrow. And a government scheme providing high-interest savings accounts to pensioners has been extended. More than 600,000 bonds have been snapped up. Now the over 65s have an extra 3 months to apply for an account. The government has announced a series of reforms aimed at reducing avoidable deaths in the NHS in England. It's part of the fallout from the mid-staffs scandal, where hundreds of patients died because of substandard care when warnings were ignored. Here's our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks.
The faces of some of the patients who died unnecessarily at Stafford Hospital. The tragedy here had profound implications for the NHS, but still there are estimated to be 1,000 avoidable deaths a month in English hospitals. The Health Secretary's proposals to tackle that are being welcomed by experts in hospital mortality.
This provides us with a new method that's based on a rigorous review by highly experienced clinicians of a representative sample of deaths from across the country.
Under the government's plans, there would be a national review of 2,000 deaths to establish how many would have been saved with the right care. Hospitals would then be ranked according to avoidable mortality rates, and whistleblowers who highlight poor care would be better supported. 2 years after the inquiry into what went wrong at Mid Staffordshire, campaigners had hoped for more.
The government have brought in a statutory duty of candour to try and outlaw cover-ups in the NHS. That needs backing up with training, support and protection for staff. We're hoping this week we hear about practical steps to support and protect staff.
Labour claims the plans are not ambitious enough.
We think there should be mandatory reporting of all hospital deaths, not just in the special measure hospitals, but in every hospital in the NHS in England.
Jeremy Hunt's announcement comes just days before a report is due to be published into the treatment of whistleblowers in the NHS. So the Health Secretary is making sure he's seen to be taking action early. Because for avoidable deaths to go down, the NHS has got to stop attacking those who speak up. Romilly Weeks, ITV News at the Department of Health.
Footballer Manchester United snatched a late draw at West Ham in the Premier League. Sheku Kouyate gave the home side the lead 4 minutes into the second half. It looked like that would be enough for victory. But in the second minute of injury time, Daley Blind scored a dramatic equaliser. There was still time for Luke Shaw to be sent off. United stay fourth. It was a day of equalisers in the Premier League. West Brom came back from 2 down at Burnley, but the home side still move out of the relegation zone. And a last-minute goal from Peter Crouch snatched a point for Stoke City at Newcastle. In Scotland, Dundee United beat Stranraer 3-0 in the Scottish Cup, and Rangers lost 2-1 to Wraith Rovers. Stars of the big screen have been walking the red carpet tonight as they arrive for this year's BAFTA Awards. Nina Nana is outside the Royal Opera House in central London, where the event is about to get underway. What are we expecting, Nina?
Well, you know, it's often said that the BAFTAs have a distinctly British bias. No bias required this year. It's simply been an outstanding year for British filmmaking talent. That's reflected in the nominations: 11 for the Grand Budapest Hotel, and of course 10 for The Theory of Everything. The film everyone's talking about, the story of Professor Stephen Hawking, and the actor everyone's talking about, Eddie Redmayne. He's been picking up awards across the Atlantic and here, and tonight he's up for Best Actor, and he told me his feet simply haven't touched the ground.
The British film industry has been incredibly kind to me, and so it means a huge amount.
Are you feeling any pressure right now?
Oh no, I feel everything that's happened, I feel so lucky with. I'm just like putting one foot in front of the other. Don't raise expectations, just trying to treasure it all, really.
I think we know who's going to win, but it's certainly not me. But I'm very happy to applaud Eddie. He gives a very good speech, and he is a dear friend, and he's playing someone who's also become a very dear friend, and I'm happy. I'm very happy for his success.
Very gracious of Benedict Cumberbatch. He takes on Eddie Redmayne for Best Actor. Ray Fiennes is up against them as well. Elsewhere, after the seeming snub from BAFTA for his film Mr. Turner, only 4 technical nominations for that film. Despite the rave reviews tonight, the biggest award of the night, the BAFTA Fellowship will go to director Mike Leigh, following in the footsteps of people like Charlie Chaplin. So it's going to be an astonishing night indeed for British filmmaking talent, and the Oscar voters will be watching very closely because they've yet to cast their votes. Back to you.
Nina, on a fast disappearing red carpet, thank you. And you can see more from that red carpet and get details of the winners as they're announced on our website, itv.com/news. That is all for now. I'm back with the late news at 10. Until then, have a good evening.
Crizal UV Protective Lenses sponsors the ITV National Weather.
There you go, Stephen. That's better, isn't it?
For all the people and lambs that are out in it.
Hello, good evening. For much of this week, we are going to have high pressure in control, so have mostly dry and settled conditions. A fair bit of cloud around at times, but also some bright spells. And at night time, we'll see patchy fog and frost forming, and that's really the case this evening and tonight. The cloudier skies have been pushing in from the northwest all day today, and up over the tops of the hills we will see some mist or fog patches forming. Out towards the east and across the south it'll be clearer that bit longer, so here we'll see a patchy frost forming, but nothing too widespread. Tomorrow it's a pretty quiet day on the whole, a good bit of cloud but also some bright spells, the best of those bright spells out towards the east. A really nice day for eastern parts of Scotland with a high of 12, maybe 13 degrees. Have a good evening.
Crizal UV Protective Lenses sponsors the ITV National Weather.